What's up is down, what's left is right. Chasing stars and holding you. I can't see the end, but we'll see it through. Flying, get on board. We're smiling on top of the world. Dangerous times, don't fly too high. Be sure to keep the ground in sight. Fly forever if you keep it tight. Love the world, but keep the sky on your mind. Flying, get on board. We're smiling on top of the world. Flying, get on board.
Yes,
Let's
sir.
go live.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well. Hopefully, it's getting warmer. I know it's incredibly warm here in Arizona, and we're pushing those triple digits already. So, not quite there yet, but getting there. But tonight, get my screen shared as usual here. Let me share this. All right, so we've got the FAA reauthorization bill. So that has passed the Senate, passed the House, and is now on its way to the president's desk. So after several months, this has finally gone through after massive delays.
Several months. It's
Sep-
almost been years.
September, October, November, December, January, February,
Almost a
March,
year, you know.
April. 9 months late.
Well, they don't call it the speed of government for,
That's right. I guess it was
just
a
because,
gestation,
right?
a gestation period that they had to go
Right.
through.
So the bill had been stalled over a variety of issues, such as the number of flights allowed at Reagan National Airport and attempts to add unrelated provisions. So I did read that they tried to add 10 more flights coming in daily, and that held the bill up to Reagan National Airport. Anyway, I do have a breakdown of some of the stuff. This comes from a VUC. And just I highlighted some of the pertinent parts that kind of can maybe affect some things. So they are terminating the AC. So they will no longer be doing the Advanced Aviation Advisory Committee. And then they are going to create an Unmanned and Autonomous Flight Advisory Committee to replace it. So this section requires the administrator to establish an Unmanned and Autonomous Flight Advisory Committee to advise the FAA on the technical challenges related to certification and operational standards of highly automated aircraft. This new committee will be made up of representatives from the UAS industry, community advocates, and certified aviation labor unions. The committee must submit an annual report to Congress on its activities.
So how are we going to
Does-
pronounce the name of this one?
Really?
UFAC? UFAC?
Uma. Uma. Does this still? I've not read this. Does this still have? In earlier versions, it was 12 seats.
I don't know yet. I did not. That's not
So that-
indicated in this document here.
So that's something to keep an eye on, because
Yep.
the AC was, I'm pretty sure it was up to 41, and the new organ FACA, it's what it is, will have 12. It's my prior understanding. We'll read deeper as we get into the act and find out.
Somebody must have thought the AAAC was getting too big.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. That's
All right.
what
So
I
we
was
also
thinking.
We also have the comprehensive plan on UAS automation. So this section requires the FAA to establish a comprehensive plan for the integration of autonomous UAS into the national airspace. This plan shall identify processes and regulations that need to change to accommodate autonomous systems and identify how the FAA intends to authorize low-risk automated operations to increasingly complex operations. In establishing a plan under this section, the FAA must consult with NASA, DoD, manufacturers, and operators of autonomous UAS. And we've got UAS integration strategy. So this is what a lot of people have been, especially in the commercial industry, have been fighting for. Directs the FAA to implement the recommendations made by GAO to develop a comprehensive drone integration strategy and ways to communicate more clearly with drone operators. In addition, this section requires the FAA to implement the recommendations made by the Inspector General of the Department of Transportation for the agency to establish goals, milestones, and performance measures for the Beyond program. We've got BV loss operations for UAS, that's beyond visual line of sight. This section directs the FAA to issue a notice of proposed rulemaking within 4 months
Of when this was first written or when it gets approved?
when it gets approved.
So they've had an
To
extra
esta-
9-month head start.
Yeah, to establish a performance-based regulatory pathway for UAS to operate beyond visual line of sight. The proposed rule developed under this section shall establish acceptable levels of risk for BV loss operations and standards for remote pilots, provide a process for the approval of associated elements of UAS, and ensure the safety of manned aviation. Within 16 months of issuing the notice of proposed rulemaking, the administrator must issue a final rule. This section contains savings clause to ensure the agency doesn't need to rescope any rulemaking efforts currently underway.
So I hear that the BVLOS NPRM will have a Part 108 in it, which was a recommendation coming out of the BVLOS ARC, Aviation Rulemaking Committee. That's a good thing in our view, because it separates different requirements for long beyond visual line of sight and shorter or extended visual line of sight, which will probably be still Part 107, which is a good thing.
All right, acceptable levels of risk and risk assessment methodology. This section directs the FAA to develop a risk assessment methodology that will allow for the determination of acceptable levels of risk to enable certain UAS operations, including operations beyond the visual line of sight. The FAA must make the risk assessment methodology available to the public on the FAA website.
No timeline on that one.
There's not a lot of timelines on a lot of these. We got one. So, when 4 months blows by,
So obviously they've changed the name of this from the 2023 Reauthorization Act to the FAA Reauthorization Act of 2024. I wanted to look for, well, the date it'll go into effect, of course, is when the president signs the bill.
Yeah.
But what's the duration of it? Do we think it's a full 5 years from now?
No, it's not. So from what I'm reading, it expires in 2028. So
the
to keep
FAA
with the
got shorted.
cadence. Well, they didn't get shorted. They got continuing resolutions to stay funded is what
Right.
they got. So
Yeah, but CR is at a lower level. So this was,
Mhm.
it's probably, if you were to just add up the 6 years of the period from CRs plus funded with this act, it's probably a smaller number. So
yeah. So we got covered drone prohibition. So this section prohibits DOT from entering into, extending, or renewing contract or awarding a grant for the operation, procurement, or contracting action of a UAS, associated elements, or detection or counter UAS systems manufactured by a covered foreign entity, to include the People's Republic of China. The section provides exemptions and waivers in limited scenarios. In addition, this section authorizes funding to enable the Department of Transportation to replace any covered UAS that is owned or operated by the department. The prohibitions under the sections are applicable to all offices and programs of the Department of Transportation.
Sounds like the U.S. drone manufacturers' lobbyists got their money's worth out of that one.
Mm-hmm. Let's see, skipping a few. There's more in here, guys. I'm just trying to pull out the pertinent ones here. So this one's a good one, I feel like. So Drone Education and Workforce Training Grant Program. So this section directs the Department of Transportation to establish a program to make grants available to educational institutions for small UAS workforce training. In addition, this section authorizes $5 million for each of the fiscal years 2025 through 2028 to be appropriated from the operations account of the FAA. So that's definitely a good one. We've got Part 107 waiver improvements. So this section directs the FAA to use a performance and risk-based approach in reviewing waiver requests under the Part 107 of Title 14 Code of Federal Regulations. The FAA is directed to improve the application and review process, including by no longer requiring the use of open-ended prompts where waiver request factors and variables can be standardized. This section also requires the FAA to recognize the safety enhancements of controlled access to property over which an unmanned aircraft flies in assessing whether to approve a waiver. Lastly, this section directs the FAA to publish all approved certificates of waiver and to consider precedential value of waivers in assessing subsequent waiver requests. So this is a big deal. So before it's been, well, the FAA can't tell you how to basically do your job, essentially. And the fact that, number one, they have to improve that and not leave open-ended prompts anymore. But the fact that they're publishing all approved certificates gives everybody the opportunity to see a certificate that got approved, what they put in it, and learn from it. So that's a big deal. So if you're a Part 107 pilot and you're struggling with that, hopefully this will roll out fairly quickly. Speed of government and all.
That's actually starting to roll out now.
Good.
Ops over people waiver. We had a Drone Pro webinar today, and they talked a little bit about the ops over people waiver changes, and this is kind of what they're doing for it. So they're saying if your mission meets XYZ criteria, submit the waiver application, and it kind of simplifies that process. So it's just like, oh, these are the things that you need, and based off of the risk assessment that that the FAA performed, we determined that cases like this are can kind of go through, and there really isn't much of an additional risk. And
so what do they need? What do they need waivers for with operations over people? It's part of 107 today, but I know there's only 2 Category 2s and no Category 4 aircraft. So
no Category 2, 9 Category 3, and no Category 4.
Okay.
And basically, a majority. There's the reason why they're still doing waivers is because there's basically no aircraft that can comply with it.
Yep. Okay. That
And
makes
so
good
they
sense.
create a set of guidelines for the waivers. So if you're doing an ops over people waiver, and Rob, I'm not sure if you were on the webinar too earlier, and you can add to it as well. But they were talking about how it's just you have XYZ that you submit, and if it meets those, it's likely that you'll get the waiver.
That's great.
Nice.
That's a substantial change from past practices. So this is a good deal.
And I believe they're going to be uploading that document of what you need tomorrow on the waivers page for the FAA.
Great.
Nice. What's up, Lucky?
How do these processes start with subjective entering of paragraphs of information and then people vetting them instead of subjective sets of guidelines that follow the rules and then they just check boxes? Like, isn't the logical way this would happen? I mean, it just seems like it should work the other way, right? Like, if they're, I don't know, it doesn't make any sense to me.
From the
right?
general
Like,
aviation world.
It's from the general aviation world, Alex?
Yeah. At least that's what they said on the webinar today. They said that process where it's very open-ended and you're supposed to come up with all the different factors on your own is supposedly from the general aviation world, and that the reason why, and 107 doesn't really go into that kind of stuff as much as Part 61 does. So that's why 107 tend to have a more difficult time with those types of processes. And that was the main thing that they were talking about in it. But that's kind of where it comes from, is the general aviation world is their cases, I guess, are a little more specific and case by case. And so that's where that broadness is from. And they just translated that to UAS.
So it's definitely interesting. So, I mean, I kind of agree with Blunty. It seemed like, and I kind of see it from two coins. Like, I feel like the FAA were like, these are the regulations. You need to fly within the regulations. If you need to step outside this, you need to tell us why, right? And, but for us, it's like, well, let's make it easier to accomplish so that we're not sitting here spinning wheels and losing money or whatever the case may be to get this operation completed.
Right.
And
it very much was a whack-a-mole process. You'd submit something, you're, nope, denied, and then you'd iterate to something that would finally pass. And you recall we've mentioned Vic Moss and Jen Player as an activity that I played a minor role on. Wrote a fantastic set of tips and techniques of a myriad of beyond visual line of sight waivers that they had gotten. So, and they were encouraged to write that by the FAA. So I'm encouraged that the FAA is embracing this process. Again, Plenty, I agree with you. I mean, it's backward, but it should have been this first. But I'm very gratified that they're coming around.
It just makes me think of while you were talking, it just made me think of the FRIA process.
yeah,
it's like
100%.
We're just building a set of checkboxes over time with the FAA, essentially, instead of them just having a set of checkboxes.
Right.
And I'm wondering if part of it is that and we've said this for a while, where the people making up the regulations aren't the people actually conducting the operations or with the expertise and knowledge in UAS, right? So I'm wondering if over time they're starting to understand the dynamics of drones and are finally able to speed this process up a little bit more. So go ahead, Blunty.
We don't have to get deep into it, but the one other thing I would think is like this is supposed to be the purpose of a rulemaking committee, right? Like this is the idea, is like the committee is gathering people who understand what the rule will be, how the rule will be implemented, what restrictions should be on the rule when it is implemented, and then you use those things to create a guideline like a checklist that you would fill out instead of having some subjective paragraph of information. So I just wonder if that can be something that, like in future rulemaking, could be ironed out, like when you implement a process like this versus later on to say we need to amend this process to add this now, right?
Right, because these things are all amendments to an existing rule, and that's how they, the process is get a waiver, it becomes popular, it's high in numbers, and then it can be an accepted practice. They don't alter the rule. It's a key point of how the structure is. It'd be nice if the architecture of the initial rule, allowed for flexible changes with a notion of checkbox and specific parameters as opposed to more whack-a-mole. Maybe
Totally agree.
Yeah.
All right. So last but not least, we've got remote ID. So remote identification, alternative means of compliance. So this section requires the administrator to review and evaluate the FAA final rule titled Remote Identification of Unmanned Aircraft to determine if unmanned aircraft manufacturers and operators can comply through alternative means of compliance, including through network-based remote identification.
All right.
The FAA shall submit the appropriate committees to Congress a report on the results of the evaluation.
Is the idea here that all the wording and all the rules is about broadcast, so you can't just assume that network covers broadcast. Is that the idea? So you have to vet the idea that network could cover broadcast, and it has to be supported. Because
That's
otherwise, you just go, yeah, network's better, but it's not actually better if everything says broadcast, I guess, and defines like Bluetooth radio range and stuff like that. So
I think that's the light side of it. My hope is
Well,
that's where it
sure.
stays.
Yeah. I mean, we
My
know
hope
the
is
pit
that-
this could go into, but
yeah, 100%. I mean,
Yeah.
and that pit being that they change all of broadcast to requiring network for everything. So yeah, that's the hot button topic right there. So some good things, some rough things, some things that we definitely are going to keep our eyes on and really dig into. But remote ID seems to be the biggest possible foible in this whole thing.
And nothing saying that they raised the limit to 1 kilogram. No changes.
No, I wish
Nothing
that'd
that
be
we were
nice,
pushing
wouldn't it?
for.
Nope.
No.
And
Yeah.
there are last time I checked was 5 separate mentions of network remote ID, and of course, the ASTM remote ID working group is working on Rev 2 of the remote ID standard, which would align with this act. Of course, ASTM is global, so but would comply with the FAA's new reauthorization act. So lots of network remote ID, and our push is to sure would be nice if we could keep broadcast allocated for recreational.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my comments and questions on that too, though, is if they're wanting to integrate network remote ID as a deconfliction mechanism, if you look at the Part 89 ruling, the variances that are authorized with the broadcast are substantial. So, what is it? The ground control station has to have a 15% certainty, but the actual altitude of the aircraft can have 150 foot certainty. So that's a very large spread, and the GPS prediction has to be accurate to within 100 feet. So if you think about it, it's really not an efficient deconfliction mechanism, at least in my mind, because of the uncertainty of the GPS.
Right.
And that's authorized.
Yes. Yeah, with 15 feet vertical for the GCS on a standard remote ID. Tightest requirements of any vehicle or stationary location of anything of any civil air authority in the world.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So again, something we'll keep an eye on, something we'll keep kind of tapped into the FAA and their progress on some of this stuff. And obviously we'll bring that to you guys as we get knowledge of it. As time permits, we will dig into this bill in its final form, and we'll create something similar to this with our takes on it, and we'll get that out on the website for y'all. So
right. Yeah, we should mention and caution folks that as they read anything from AUVSI, the AUVSI have been strong advocates for network remote ID forever. So they are exclusively about commercial operations. They have no interest in spending any time on recreational.
Yeah.
So as XJet points out in the YouTube chat, I don't see anything in here talking about how the GPS accuracy can be affected by things like solar flares. I don't know if you guys saw any of the stories, but definitely, like, especially with farm equipment, they were told not to plant crops this time right now because the solar flares were so strong they were messing up the GPS accuracy of the tractors.
Oh my goodness.
And it would shift where it thought things were planted, and they rely on that for all the future spraying and everything. So if you then replay your track and it's off by a few inches, it'll just go dig up everything versus, kill all the plants.
There's a lot of discussion in the specification for WBAS, so Wi-Fi assisted GPS, which improves the accuracy a lot. So the location accuracy a lot. So love the humor, but there, well, not sun flares. There are accommodations for improving the overall accuracy of a satellite-based system.
Is that why my phone always tells me to turn on the Wi-Fi?
To improve my
To improve accuracy, yeah.
That's
That's one of the
that's
things.
exactly why, yes.
Oh,
And
sketchy.
then we can tell what floor you're on. Remember
Yeah,
that.
I know. Well, now they're using Wi-Fi for sonar, like sonar imaging from the signals. It's super awesome. So, you know. Anyway, moving on. Going down that. So we've got New York. So Dave, you're claiming this one. Just
Yeah,
saying.
not mine. This is up in the Great White North. Yeah, Lee Stefanik's district is right up by the Canadian border.
All right, so we've got Congresswoman Elise Stefanik introduced the Drones for First Responders Act, and while this seems like it would be a beneficial piece of legislation for our friends like Rob, and in some ways it kind of is, I guess, to a certain extent, and we'll go through it here in a second, but. She is looking to implement a new tariff on Chinese controlled drones and use the tariff revenue to establish a new grant program to help first responders, critical infrastructure providers, and farmers purchase secure drones. This legislation will increase the competitiveness of U.S. drone manufacturers and enhance U.S. national security. So, I have the wonderful bill right here.
So
I'm not going to.
this is important from the perspective of, I think it was 2 weeks ago, we were talking about this as a draft. Then we said, watch this because Elise Stefanik is the third ranking Republican in the House. Bang, we have a bill on it. This could take, a rank and file representative months to get to this stage. She has a bill in 2 weeks. So please, everyone, pay attention to this in the terms of get ready to write your congressional representatives about this.
100%. So I'm not going to go through the findings in the sense of Congress. She's basically just says that 90% of unmanned aircraft are coming from the People's Republic of China. That it's a security risk. It's vital to national security. And we're going to dig down a little deep. So she's looking to implement starting on. Let's
6
see.
years
30
from now,
days
was it?
after 30 days after the enactment, the effective tariff would go into place if this was passed through. So, the first year, 30% tariff. So that DJI Avata, which is now like just $600 for the drone itself, is going to run you close to $800. Probably a little over $800. And then after the first year, it goes up to 35%. After the second year, up to 40%. So on and so forth until we get to 45%. And then the year after that, 4 years, it's $100 tariff plus 50%.
On what?
Plus 50%.
100% added to like your 50-cent piece of
No, it's
equipment?
$100.
It's
So if you
drone.
bought, let's say
It's a
Nevada is
UAV.
$600, right? So they're going to add $100 tax to it, and then 50% on top of that.
So what's the definition of a complete? Is it like defined as a complete drone or drone parts or pieces?
I think
or-
it says just UAV or UAS.
So all
Vehicle.
It doesn't say the individual parts, I believe.
So it says, for the purposes, let's see, certain products of China shall be subject to additional rates of duty as provided in this note. The products of China that are subject to additional rates of duty under subheading, So
It doesn't list what they are. It just has the reference.
let's see.
Well, it
They're
looks like they were
classified in the
working on this at
subheading.
4:40 in the morning, so it's got to be full of errors. I know it would be if I was writing this at 4:40 in the morning.
So, and then the essential part is that, let's see, we got unmanned aircraft classified under heading 8806 of the HTS may not enter customs territory of the United States unless the entry of the unmanned aircraft is accompanied by a certificate or other documentation required by U.S. Customs and Border Protection establishing the unmanned aircraft does not contain a flight controller, radio, data transmission device, camera, gimbal, ground control system, operating software, network connectivity hardware, or data storage manufactured in the People's Republic of China. So it's a complete UAV, from what I'm understanding here. However, it cannot contain any part related to one of those categories that was manufactured in the PRC.
But my question,
Just the
Josh,
airframe.
yeah, my question though is if this bill is truly aimed at protecting security risks for critical infrastructure, national security, why are we just paying more for the same things?
Exactly right.
Because
Exactly right.
they're more
Well, they
secure if
want
they're more
to
expensive.
discourage you from buying it, and those
Mhm.
that do buy it, they want that money to go to first responders who would then purchase more expensive and inferior U.S. or allied equipment.
So here's the deal: is that if they cost more to bring in, so it comes back to the cost of goods, right? So if I'm a company, let's say I'm Get FPV, right, and I sell DJI equipment, which they do, and I want to bring in a DJI Avata, that means I'm, as a company, having to pay more to get that into the country, and then I'm passing on that to you. So if I'm a company like Get FPV, my initial impression is I'm not going to pay more to bring that in. I'm going to find a substitute to sell anyway. So it's to disincentivize the people who are selling these in the United States from bringing them in the first place. It's an effective ban. And for those that do choose to bring them in, then the money that they collect from these tariffs and duties are going to go into this fund for first responders to basically be able to pull grants out and replace their equipment, if that makes sense. So
I should also point out that this includes a full, essentially a full ban by 2030 on all imports from PRC for drone parts.
Mhm.
It's not just like an increased tariff; it like ends up effectively banning them in 2030.
So I could see the next version of DJI's drones as actually a remote control car that once you get it here, you swap the wheels for propellers and make it fly.
well, it can't contain a flight controller.
It's not a
or
flight
gimbal or
controller.
camera
It's
or-
for ground, so it's not a. It's a ground controller. This is a UAV ban, not a RC car ban.
ground control system. It's right there. All right. So anyway, the next steps are establishing a treasury fund to deposit the duties and tariffs into, and then being able to utilize that for first responders as well as farmers and ranchers to purchase or lease secure unmanned aircraft systems. So 60% of the fund shall be available for grants that benefit first responders, 20% for farmers and ranchers, and 20% available for grants to benefit providers of critical infrastructure. So I think that's all I highlighted in this. So this is a pretty big deal here. It's definitely going to drive the cost of goods up.
Coming from AUVSI in there supporting it too.
I did
bill?
not read that, but maybe
read.
I missed it in my quick push through on this.
That
I
would
believe
be
I read
bad.
something about that.
That would be bad.
Let's run.
I know drone responders published today that they were neutral on the bill, which I disagree with. I think this is something like y'all mentioned that's significant.
Drone,
Yeah.
Wow, drone responders came out with so the way it's structured is that if you oppose this bill, you must be anti-US manufacturing. So they're trying to play that game, but that's drone responders are being neutral. Ooh, that's unfortunate. You would have hoped that they would have come out strongly opposed to this.
So
Agreed.
Dave, this is and this is the thought I had during the entire time I was reading this, and the thought I have anytime something like this comes up. And I know I pick on you for your age a little bit, but this has a little bit of the essence of the Red Scare kind of stuff going on in it, right? I mean,
Absolutely. China bad.
and-
That's the one thing that they can agree on in Congress.
so I don't know. It's just really odd to me, and
Yeah.
I get times change and things go on in the world, but man, this is it's
Yeah.
getting goofy at this
And like
point.
you're saying, it seems like it's more based on fear, not facts.
Correct.
It's
100%.
not in the bill. The comment that I saw from AUVSI. It's on Steinfink's page website.
Oh, Stefanik.
Here. Yeah, Stefan. Yeah, here, I'll share it if you want.
Yeah, let me pull this down real quick.
I mean, yeah, this is just using people being scared of China to subsidize U.S. drone manufacturers. It's like it's very clear that that's what's happening.
Yeah, and like you saw with the
And,
Reauthorization Act, where they're talking about giving people money to buy American drones. Like that was their lobbyist saying, "Hey, give us more money and buy more of our drones."
And here's the thing: is like I'm all for U.S. manufacturing. I mean, providing jobs to American citizens is key, but I mean, we need to create a product that's actually replacing this before. Again, it's cart before the horse, and it's just it's backwards.
Yeah.
we should be buying the drones because they're better, not because you're forced to. That's
Correct.
really dumb.
Yeah, get the market through innovation, not legislation. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The good news
This
is
stifles innovation.
do what?
This is like the opposite of innovation. It's like it stifles innovation. You're like saying it doesn't matter what you built. Just put something on the market, and then people will buy
And
it because
somebody
that's
will
the only
buy it.
option. Because we're going to force all the other things out of the market. And you could
Right.
say like, there's an argument here to say, okay, this scales over the next 4 to 6 years, right? So this will force U.S. drone manufacturers to slowly develop better products and to compete with each other, and in a market where they can't be fought against by cheap Chinese drones. Like that's the idea, right? But it's like you're like creating this weird insular organization, like industry out of nothing. Like you're just saying like, hey, we can't compete. There's nothing we can do to make a product that's as good as these other people for anywhere near the cost. So we're just going to force you to buy it anyway by restricting you to the ability to buy it from every other place. And we're going to just say it's because of privacy and security, not because of all these actual reasons we're doing it.
And
If
there's-
this bill was like, help U.S. drones by banning Chinese drones because we can't compete, and if there's some realistic version of this that was being said, I would agree with it. But like, at least you're being honest. But this is just like you said, Josh, Red Scare. This is like,
Yeah.
let's use our fear to build this industry. And
And then
it's
DJI is
and,
going
I
to
mean-
find a way to work around it anyway by licensing and selling their stuff to a
Yes.
U.S. company who rebrands it.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, and here's the hard part too, is like, going back to what Blunty said, if we were gonna slowly ramp this up to encourage, U.S. manufacturers to produce better product, you don't start at a 30% tariff, right? You start at maybe a 5% and work your way up from there, and then go. But starting at unbelievable, unprecedented numbers is absolutely insane.
Yeah, this
So-
is also amusing that the grants that they want to fund via the tariffs are at no additional cost to the
Yeah,
taxpayer.
that's why I highlighted it as like,
Yeah, it's like,
who's the
let
one
me
paying the
do-
tariff?
Well, not
Yeah,
from
logic-
your taxes, but
logic
from
check.
purchasing the drones.
Right.
Exactly.
It's almost,
100%.
but it's almost like these public services who are buying these things get money from taxpayers. Isn't that crazy? So it is like the taxpayers are paid for it. That's so weird.
I am told
So
though
the
that
Uh,
it's not likely to pass the Senate, so that is encouraging.
What? Say that again. I'm sorry.
I'm told that this is not likely to pass the Senate.
Good.
Definitely
Is-
something to keep an
Do you
eye
know
on.
that? Do you know the number of the? Is there already a corresponding bill in the Senate, or are they going to? Is this likely to go past to the Senate as a single bill?
I have not heard on either of those.
Okay. We'll keep an eye on that and keep track. That would.
So
I do want to follow this up though. I don't
Yeah.
know if we've mentioned this recently. DJI just published a security white paper. You can just Google DJI security white paper. They have a whole bunch of information that they've released on all their cybersecurity. So, something that I've been advocating for is I wish that we had a cybersecurity study that looked at the U.S. manufacturers as well, because, right now we seem to only be targeting particular manufacturers where really it could be in reality an actual problem for U.S. based manufacturing as well. We don't know. There hasn't been any kind of third party
Yeah.
studies done on it.
For all we know, a U.S.-based manufacturer could be directly sending all data from their drones straight to China because they're working for them, and we'd have no idea that they weren't.
Right. Right.
all right. So on that note, we'll swap over here. So DJI is urging all pilots to get involved amid threat of U.S. drone ban. So the recent passing of the TikTok bill in Congress is raising concerns that it might set a precedent for similar actions against Chinese companies in the U.S. More specifically, it could affect pending legislation like the Countering CCP Drones Act or the one we just Drones First Responder Act. Potential DJI ban would impact all drone users, whether they fly for fun, business, or government purposes. But Adam Welsh, DJI's head of global policy, is quick to point out that an apples-to-apples comparison between two companies is not possible, since DJI and TikTok are diversely different companies with distinct technologies and user profiles. Drone DJ readers know that political discourse and threat of DJI drones from being banned in the U.S. have been going on for years. As such, a large part of the community has started feeling fatigue or desensitized to the ongoing discussions surrounding such initiatives. What's different this time is that the Countering CCP Drones Act is the first to escalate DJI targeting beyond restricting government department use. The implications are so drastic for all those who fly DJI drones that most were convinced that such a bill would never gain any momentum. But then we saw the mechanism that was used to push the TikTok bill across the finish line, adding that a source in recent New York Times articles reference an upcoming China week in May. So Congress may have a similar opportunity for the Countering CCP Drones Act sooner than we think. In short, the tone in DC has shifted significantly, and we should take any pending anti-DJI legislation more seriously than ever before. I would also like to highlight that this is an election year, so things can move even more quickly.
Yeah.
So
What's interesting is in the Stefanik bill, there's no mention of Congressman Graves, the chair of the aviation subcommittee. So it appears that she's gone around the need to go to committee. So, and in normal circumstances, you have to believe that would cause all sorts of furor. A ranking member of the House takes a bill directly to the floor and goes around the responsible committee. Foul in normal days. So if anyone hasn't noticed, we're not in normal times.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
So,
hey, but good,
go ahead, Rob.
Good news though that the legislation in Connecticut fell through this week.
Did yep.
So, yeah, that's a win, and that was on behalf of lobbying efforts opposing the bill.
Mm-hmm.
That is good.
That is good news.
Mm-hmm.
What
I
was
read that
one all
DJI
about?
did some showcase some security improvements or whatnot that helped kill that as well. So I briefly glanced over the article. I felt like this was probably enough DJI news for today, but yeah, I did see that. All right, so we've got South Africa. So these gentlemen built a drone that surpassed the Red Bull's 350 kilometer an hour. So the father and son team from Worcester in Western Cape recently broke the Guinness World Record for the world's fastest battery-powered remote-controlled quadcopter. Luke Bell and his father Mike managed to achieve an average speed of 480.23 kilometers per hour, which is 298.47 miles per hour, by doing speed runs in opposite directions to negate the wind, taking the official world record in the process. The previous world record was set at 360.5 kilometers per hour. So that's a massive jump, 120 kilometers per hour jump over the previous record. Let's see. The local drone builders say their creation can accelerate from 0 to 300 kilometers per hour in just 2 seconds and reach a theoretical top speed of 510 kilometers per hour. So last year, he says, last year I created the fastest drone in the world, but I always felt like it was kind of a prototype and not quite fast enough. This year, my dad and I started to improve every aspect of the original Peregrine drone to create an epic successor. And yes, the drone is even faster than the Red Bull Formula One drone. So there is a video up on YouTube. I'm not going to play it because video plays crappy through the stream. But they do go through it. They do give you a camera view from the FPV feed on the drone, and you do see it hit close to 510 kilometers per hour in the GPS, whatever they're using to measure, which I imagine is GPS. So definitely check that out. It's from Luke Maximo Bell. And if you haven't seen it, check it out. They go through how they built it, what they used, and definitely showcase the speed run. So just a little bit of a palate cleanser at the end of the all the bad stuff that I dropped on y'all today. So with that, that's all I have. There is some other news in terms of some bands that
Something about T-Motor.
T-Motor that Blunty and Alex and I were kind of discussing a little bit. However, and I'll kind of just quickly see if I can pull this up here, and I'll kind of go through what I got going on here. So let me get this shoved up here. Sorry, reorienting my screens a little bit here. So this came from SUAS News, and they're added to the Bureau of Industry and Security Department of Commerce entity list. So T-Motor is on there. So I've been digging through the entity list here, and I'm digging through the tags for OFC sanctions, digging through definitions of stuff, the Bureau of Industry and Security website, and a couple commerce control lists that I'm trying to start to dig through. And then this is the commerce control list, and it is, I don't even know how, 79 pages long of different things. So I've been digging through all this stuff to try and understand what's really going on here. But the gist of this is that, from what I'm understanding, is that T-Motor has been added to this list of the entity list, basically saying that it cannot be exported, transferred in country, et cetera, et cetera. Now that kind of control only exists to certain, from what I'm gathering, to certain entities that are a part of the to other entities that kind of fall within these sanctions lists. So essentially, if I'm a company, I can still do business with T-Motor. So if I'm Get FPV, I can still do business with T-Motor. However, doing business with them essentially would put a red flag on me, which could open me up to a level of investigation on who I'm sending T-Motor products to. So, and if it's found that I'm sending T-Motor products to somebody who's not supposed to get them from this list, then obviously that would be bad. So essentially, it's the procurement and diversion of products for reasons. Essentially, for this one, it's because they suspect T-Motor of providing products to Russia in their invasion of Ukraine. So therefore, it's against USA security interests, is what they cite in the bill. And so if I'm Get FPV, I sell to somebody in Russia, that could be diverted to the war effort over there, and obviously that bad. So it opens up a level of scrutiny on businesses who do business with T-Motor, if that makes sense.
Sounds like sounds like a good endorsement for T-Motor. Hey, our motors are so good we can't be sold to Russia because they work so well for military uses. Hey, why don't you use them in your recreational drones?
I thought the whole point of this list was exports of technology from the U.S. to these countries and companies.
It's also diversion.
They're talking.
Yeah. It's also
right, but when they say like exports, it means exports of our tech to T-Motor, right? It doesn't mean like T-Motor products, does it?
So I
Like,
think that's also part of it. Like, we shouldn't be supplying T-Motor with material, let's say, steel or magnets to produce their product as well. So we shouldn't be.
Yeah, I sent an email to the line that they had in there, and hopefully I'll hear something back about that, because I too was unsure of if it was talking about uses of the product that they make or sending materials to the company itself.
Yeah, my understanding was it's the use of the T-Motor as a component in a U.S. Manufactured product. And this is like step one of tracking and Josh, I think, articulated it nicely about this raises the level of scrutiny that's easily possible. And the next level is it'll pop up on a Department of Commerce tariff list because it's already
Well, and
identified as a known entity.
And I also think it's also about
covered entity.
materials, a covered entity. But here's the deal: is because this is the list of this is the commerce control list, and you can see on here it could be evaporators for lithium hydroxide. So these are parts and components as well.
A
They're
fiber
it could be
optic cable.
chemicals, fiber optic cable.
Yeah. My understanding was it was all this stuff, like whatever's listed for the company, can't be exported from us to them.
That's
but I
my
could be
yeah.
yeah.
That was my
that,
understanding too.
Yeah, and
So-
so like limits
And one
that
thing
side
that
of the things.
looking
Like
at the list that might help with this is I looked at DJI's restriction on it, and DJI's restriction does allow for exports to DJI for repairs only.
That's
Interesting.
So you
Which
can see
is
right
weird.
here, flight control systems for non-military UAVs, flight control systems for military UAVs, flight control system software, all kinds of different stuff here. So,
like I don't think we could send them that. I think they can still send us that, but it just puts a flag on people buying
Yeah.
it in our country.
Yeah.
The FAQ section said that you can still import from them.
Yeah, but here's the
But
thing:
it
is
could be
they're
a
going to
red
be looking
flag.
at your business, basically saying, okay, so are you then procuring this from T-Motor, bringing it here, and then attempting to export it to Russia or wherever on the covered entities list, to basically say, you're diverting product to subvert national security, essentially. So it's a very convoluted mess, and I spent several hours looking at this today to try and understand it a little better. But like one rabbit hole led to another rabbit hole, which led to an anthill, which led to a termite mound. I mean, it was just a a very deep rabbit hole to dive down. So, but I am working on this. I'm looking at it a little further just so I better understand it. I know there may be some questions surrounding that if you're a business and you still want to obviously do business with T-Motor. They make great motors. But
I mean, nobody stopped selling DJI drones when they
Right.
got on this list. So I
Yep.
can't imagine it would actually affect anybody.
Yeah.
Like buying these products. So
Yep. So, at any rate, that's all I've got. Gentlemen around the room, what do y'all have?
I've got another remote ID module to review and put a write-up on our website. Thanks, Dave.
Which one
I'm
this
here.
time?
I believe is it Lumineer or Get FPV?
Yes.
Yep, Lumineer.
Lumineer. That's the one it shipped. So we got one, and it fit our criteria of remote ID modules that we want to investigate, which is it's nominally in the 10-gram magnitude, and it's in the $100-ish dollar range.
Although it
this one-
doesn't have a declaration of compliance yet.
Yeah, that's
it
what I was-
does.
It does now.
Yep, it came through on the 13th. Yep.
Okay.
Good.
There you go.
All right, so Blunty, you got this one. I'll pop it up for you.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, like, to point out, this may go nowhere and it may not be defensible, but GoPro has listed a set of patents for both design and product, like design and purpose or whatever you call them. There's like a listed set, and they filed an official complaint against Insta360, and they say they're violating their patents for both the shape of the GoPro, because their actual camera looks identical, and for a lot of the functions like super view, dynamic zooming, some of the stabilization stuff. They're claiming they violated those patents. So we'll see what sticks, but it is possible that in the next year or two, if this gets resolved, you'll either Insta360 will be paying fees to GoPro, or they'll be off the market depending on how well they can enforce it.
Didn't GoPro do the same thing with another company in the past?
Polaroid, yes, they did. Yeah, the Polaroid Cube, they did it when they were competing against the GoPro
Session.
Yeah,
And
and then
the
I
Then
know
they
like
killed the session.
Orange was it the Orange
The run
camera?
cam.
Run
cam.
I know they had to make sure that their design was significantly different from the session, like shaped just different enough that they avoided that.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because they did all that and then they killed the session, and it was
Yeah,
just
right.
like, okay.
Right.
And I mean, that was the go-to camera for a lot of people, including myself. So I have 3 dead ones, but yeah, that's hopefully Insta360 can again survive that. They do make a good product. So all right, Dave, you got anything?
I do not.
All right, Alex.
Yeah, we have at the International Open, it was announced, or well, for the International Open, the drones. There's going to be a race using the drones from Sharjah that anyone could participate in. I think there were 48 seats, and they sold out, I believe, in one day.
Nice.
Wow.
So it's going to be
So is-
very similar format to how that race was, but using the same exact drones.
So were these
For people,
spec drones, or I think we're ahead of
They're
the
for
game,
people who
right?
don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're stock drone. They're all identical. It's a build setup mainly that was set up for the race itself. For the Sharjah race, and
Yep.
so now we're using them for that. And the winner of this race is going to get to keep one of these drones,
Nice.
and they're also going to raffle off one of them.
Nice.
Great idea. I love this. And this is all multi GP.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Nice idea. Nice work.
So that's going to be going on at the International Open. So
Which is June.
that's going to be June 12th to the 16th.
Nice.
Excellent.
So
All right,
in Muncie,
Dan.
Indiana.
Anything from you, sir?
Nothing else. Nope.
Okay. Rob, you got anything, brother?
No, sir.
All right. So to just wrap us up, I believe Dave, myself, and Rob will be at Flight Fest in a little over a month now. So that'll be a good time.
Got your shirt on a
And,
little early there, Josh.
That's right.
Well, it's last year's shirt. So,
two
years
years
ago.
22.
Oh, it is a 22. Oh, yeah. I got to put last year's shirt on.
June 19 through 23.
And so this will be our David and mine's third year going, Rob's second year. And it was definitely a good time last year. We'll be there. I'm already stocking up on tools and replacing some stuff to get ready for anybody who is there and may need some tech assistance. And we stayed pretty sneaking busy last year. So it was definitely a good time. And So
guaranteed we'll be busier this year. It's the 10th anniversary. We sold out of the first set of camping sites in 3 days, and so it could be in the magnitude of 6,000 people. So it's looking to be large and fun.
So I'm gonna need more energy drinks this year. More energy drinks.
That's it.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us this evening. Super appreciate it. Hopefully, some of this was news and gives you some clue as what's going on at a government level in various forms and factors. And we'll keep our eye on things, and we'll bring that to you as we get more information. So, but with that, we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Thanks for joining, and have a great night.
No.
dangerous times, don't fly too high. Be sure to keep the ground in sight.